All right, let's go back into Aristotle, where this week we're in books 3 and 4. We're primarily in book 3. Book 4 it's important, but it's mainly examples. These examples are useful in that they flesh out, they give us a deeper insight into how Aristotle's thinking of these concepts. But I want to spend our time today in book 3. So within book 3, Aristotle is concerned about action. Because ultimately it's going to be the case that virtuous action has to be something that's voluntary and choice-worthy. But in order to first understand what it is that is voluntary and choice-worthy, we need to understand what these concepts mean. So Aristotle, when he approaches this, he very much approaches it from how Aristotle thinks of it as a part-whole relationship. We would perhaps more contemporarily think of it in terms of species and genus. So in the same way that canines are a kind of mammal, Aristotle is going to think that there are different kinds of action. There's the voluntary and the involuntary. So Aristotle is going to he divides up his philosophical landscape into part-whole relationships. And this is just par for the course for Aristotle. This is how he approaches all philosophical inquiry. All philosophical inquiry for Aristotle is first approached by thinking, what do the hoi polloi, what do the common people think? Once we have a baseline understanding of what the common people think, then we start to subject their beliefs to philosophical inquiry, and we start to refine their positions. And a lot of this has to go through this systematic part-whole relationship. So none of this is weird for Aristotle. But when it comes to action, I'm going to erase here real quick. We're going to create a phylogenetic tree, the way Aristotle thinks of this. When it comes to action, we're going to have two kinds of action. We're going to have the voluntary and involuntary. There's going to be some intermediary cases, but Aristotle is not so much concerned with the outlier as he is concerned with the norm. So when we look at action, we're considering the causes of phenomena. And Aristotle maintains that insofar as action is concerned with the causal relationship of phenomena, there's two ways in which phenomena can be caused. You can have the source of the cause being external to the subject, or you can have the source of the cause being internal to the subject. In the case of the involuntary, the source of the cause, or we may just say the cause, the source of the action, the cause, is external to the subject. And he gives us some examples here. Some examples here are actions done under duress. So this is kind of the example of throwing things overboard in a storm. Actions due to ignorance. This is an interesting one. And then actions due to compulsion. So someone is threatening you to do something. In some ways, Aristotle doesn't see these actions as being fully voluntary. The reason for that being the subject itself is not the source of the change. The subject itself did not cause the phenomenon to occur. Part of it is grounded in Aristotle's physics. the text that you have on Canvas under supplemental material. And in the physics, Aristotle identifies a series of causes. So different ways in which we can use this word cause. He identifies the formal cause, the material cause, the efficient cause, and the final cause. Okay. He entertains a pseudo-fifth cause, that of luck, or that of chance. I put luck or chance in brackets because Aristotle discusses it in the physics as a potential source of change or as a potential cause of phenomena, but Aristotle is very quick to dismiss luck. Aristotle does not think there is such a thing as luck. So it's a very brief foray into Aristotle's physics. Remember, physics here is not what we're thinking about. It's not Newtonian mechanics. Rather, it's a study of nature. He recognizes here that causes can be understood in different ways. That is, there's different ways in which things come about. So I'm going to get rid of luck. Aristotle is very quick to dismiss luck. So let's imagine the case as of a bronze statue. So imagine the Statue of Liberty, a bronze statue. Okay, we can ask ourselves, what caused the Statue of Liberty? What caused the bronze statue? And these are simply different ways in which we could answer this question. So beginning with the formal cause, we may appeal to the shape of the Statue of Liberty. And we may say, well, what makes the Statue of Liberty the Statue of Liberty is that she is X amount of feet tall and possesses the shape of a woman whose arm is extended, is holding placards or whatever, wears a crown. It's talking about the shape of the structure. And in a sense, this is what causes the Statue of Liberty to be the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty would not be the Statue of Liberty if it was a man instead of a woman. What it is to be the Statue of Liberty, at least in part, is to have the form of the Statue of Liberty. We can appeal to the matter. We can say that what it is to be the Statue of Liberty is to be bronze. The Statue of Liberty would not be the Statue of Liberty were it made of stone. It would be rather a facsimile or a replica of the Statue of Liberty. What it is to be the Statue of Liberty is to be made of bronze. We can point toward the efficient cause. So this is kind of what we think of as this comes most natural to us because of our acclamations like Newtonian mechanics. What it is to be the Statue of Liberty, or what causes the Statue of Liberty, is whoever was that made the Statue of Liberty. If I was better at U.S. and French history, I knew who did that. But what it is to cause the Statue of Liberty is the external source that imposes the form on the matter. So the person, the sculptor, who took the bronze and shaped it into the Statue of Liberty. In some sense, that person caused the Statue of Liberty to be. But then we also have this final cause. And this is the telos. We've talked about the concept of the telos, so the goal, the end, the purpose, and usually put away from actions. But we can think that what it is to do the Statue of Liberty is to be a gift that the French gave to the United States as a token of friendship. So what it is to be the Statue of Liberty is to be some end goal. The same way the French intended the Statue of Liberty to be a token of friendship commemorating immigration, this is what it is to be the Statue of Liberty. It would not be the Statue of Liberty if it was not given by the French to the United States in the 19th century. It would be something else. So, for example, when you go to the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island, and you purchase a little keychain of the Statue of Liberty, if you're into such trinkets, you did not buy the Statue of Liberty. We all understand that. We may say this is the Statue of Liberty, but we're talking very loosely. We understand that this itself, this little keychain trinket, is not the Statue of Liberty. Why? Because it lacks all of these causes. It's merely a facsimile. The keychain trinket, yes, it shares the form of the Statue of Liberty, and that's why we can recognize it as the Statue of Liberty. But it's made of plastic. It's not made of bronze. It's not made by the Frenchman who made the actual Statue of Liberty. It's made by some sweatshop in China. And it shares a different final end. Its end was not a token of friendship and celebrating immigration to the French and the United States. Rather, it is commemorating, I don't know, one's family trip or whatever to see the Statue of Liberty. So this is the way Aristotle's thinking of causation. And this stretches into the Nicomachean ethics when we differentiate between different kinds of action. Involuntary actions have their cause, their efficient cause. Aristotle here is focused on efficient causation. Involuntary actions have their efficient cause outside of the subject. So when someone does something under duress, so his example is the people who throw goods over the ship during a storm, in some sense the cause of that action is external, because they would not have done otherwise. Okay. Now within the voluntary, which is what we're focused on, well, let's get our definition of the voluntary. So within voluntary actions, we have, what it is to be a voluntary action is the cause is internal to the subject. So if you go back and think about when we talked about Aristotle's conception of change, based in Theonimo, we move from first potentiality to second potentiality, which is the same as first actuality to second actuality, we see that Aristotle thinks that organisms can be the locus of their own change. And the same thing is happening here. What it is to be a voluntary action is for the source of change to be inherent in the organism itself. However, within voluntary actions, there's going to be some differentiation. Okay? There's going to be this concept of deliberation. And non-deliberative. So Aristotle wants to differentiate between the things that we think about and we try to reason our way through, compared to the things that we do not try to reason our way through. And Aristotle is clear that what we deliberate about when it comes to actions is the means. What we do not deliberate about are the ends. Okay? The ends are kind of fixed in place. So, for example, I'm going to get rid of the involuntary because we do not care about the involuntary for our purposes. Let's use some of the examples that he gives us. He gives us the example of a legislature. So we have a subject, a legislature, who is going to do some things to achieve some end. So this is our means, and this is our end. The legislature, the individual who is legislating, does not deliberate about what it is that she is trying to do. It's really obvious. She's trying to, as Aristotle puts it, enact law and order. If the legislature, the individual who's legislating, fails to understand that her end, the end of her qua legislature, is to enact law and order, then the legislature simply does not understand what her role is. Assuming she understands what her role is, that her role is to enact law and order, per Aristotle, then all the legislature is deliberating or thinking or contemplating is how to best achieve this end. How do I enact law and order? What practical steps have to be taken in order to bring about law and order? Perhaps a little complex of an example. So we can imagine a shipbuilder. The shipbuilder, as the name would suggest, has one end. There's only one goal of what it is to be a shipbuilder. It is to build ships. And as we discussed last week, what it is to be a good shipbuilder is to bring about a good product in this case. So a shipbuilder who builds ships that sinks is a really bad shipbuilder. Now, we're not talking bad in a moral sense. She could be a totally morally pleasant human being. But a bad shipbuilder, in Aristotle's conception of good and bad, is one who fails to bring about her desired ends. A shipbuilder who builds ships that sinks sucks at her job. Okay? But what the shipbuilder deliberates about, focusing here on voluntary action, is not about, should I build a shipbuilder doesn't wake up and say, should I build a ship today? I'm not sure. She knows she's going to build a ship. What she deliberates about is, how do I build the ship? Okay? What steps do I have to take? So let's say she receives a contract to build a rowing boat. Think of like the ones that professional rowers use. She then has to deliberate about what materials, what strategies, what goes into building a competitive rowing boat compared to if she received a contract to build a 30-foot fishing boat. Though she can perhaps do both, insofar as she's a shipbuilder, this is quite a talented shipbuilder, I'm imagining. Even though she can do both by bringing about good ships, she's going to deliberate about how to achieve the specific goals, what steps need to be taken. And Aristotle thinks that it is within this deliberation about the means that virtue resides. As such, virtue, in Aristotle's mind, is a choice. One cannot be virtuous involuntarily. Okay? There is no such thing for Aristotle as being a good, remember functional good, not moral good, not normative. There is no such thing for Aristotle as being a good person accidentally. Okay? So imagine the person who, just is very innately, they're just very kind. You have that aunt or something who's just naturally very sympathetic, right? And she just seems to always do the sympathetic thing. Stretching out the example a little bit, Aristotle does not view this as being commendable. Because in order to be virtuous, in order to achieve virtue, virtue requires deliberation. Virtue requires not only an understanding of what one's goal or end is, but it requires deliberation upon how to best achieve it. So doing a quote-unquote good thing by accident has no merit for Aristotle. Virtue is commendable in Aristotle's mind because it requires deliberation. If virtue did not require deliberation, there would be no merit in it. By contrast, vice also requires deliberation. Vice requires deliberation. So one cannot be bad, remember functional bad, accidentally. what it is to be a vicious person is to desire to bring about bad things. And this is going to be a problem for Aristotle. Maybe a minor problem, I don't know. But it's going to be a problem for Aristotle as we get to books 7 through 10 of the Ethics. Because in there, Aristotle is going to paint two very different and ostensibly incompatible pictures of the vicious person. On the one hand, the vicious person is like the characteristic Disney villain. They desire bad things, and they actively work to bring about bad ends. But Aristotle will then paint a different picture of the vicious person as one who desires good things, but is weak. One who cannot bring about the good things that she desires. And these are two radically different pictures of vicious people. But we'll get there in the coming weeks. What we need to understand for now is that virtue and vice are not accidental. Moral development, or development in becoming good, is not by chance. One can't just bumble one's way through life and expect to cultivate virtue. But because of this, because one can't just bumble through life and cultivate virtue, this also then entails that one cannot achieve eudaimonia, the ultimate end of this whole project. Eudaimonia, or happiness or flourishing. One cannot achieve eudaimonia, and as such be eudaimon, accidentally. If one does not pay any mind to their actions, if one is not deliberating about the means toward their ends, they stand no chance at achieving eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is a conscious, active effort. It is a thing that is all-consuming. To be eudaimon requires that one is constantly engaged in proper deliberation so that one can best bring about the desired end. Now this sounds exhausting, and at first it is exhausting. Aristotle is fine with that. Aristotle is going to think, we'll talk about this in time, but this is where parents come in. Good parents, while the child is still in a stage of heteronomy, so being governed by someone else, not being self-governed, they train children. So if you've ever been to, if you've ever been to, as a small child, some kind of religious institution, you may have been given $5 to place in some kind of offering basket, all right, or $1 or whatever. The reason parents give their children $1 to place in the offering basket has nothing to do with the child. Well, it has nothing to do with the child's doing good things. It's not a good thing for the child. The child is not getting any kind of moral credit for putting $1 in the offering basket. It's not even the kid's dollar. What it's doing, however, is inculcating a habit. Okay? It is inculcating a habit of charity. So that when the child grows into an adult and becomes autonomous, becomes self-governing, she doesn't have to deliberate as strenuously about how to be charitable. Okay? As we inculcate these virtues, as we practice them, it becomes easier for us to instantiate the virtue. So for Aristotle, moral virtue, this is to be differentiated from intellectual virtue. So moral virtue is habitual. It is inculcated and developed via habituation. In order to be more courageous, you have to do brave things, which means you have to be in situations that demand bravery. If one has never been exposed to fear, one cannot be brave. Okay? If one has never had to be temperate, one has never been exposed to the allure of physical pleasures, then one cannot be temperate. Okay, so in order to be temperate, you must first have been exposed to the allure of physical pleasures, be it food, drink, what have you, and then you must be able to deliberate upon the proper means. So Aristotle is very much against this kind of puritanical notion that is common of just absolute sheltering. So we see this as very common, this puritanical thought, that the best thing we should do for a child is shelter them from bad things. Aristotle is going to say, you're going to raise terrible children if you shelter them from bad things. Rather, what you should be doing is exposing them while they are young and while they are under your supervision. Expose them to the world. Expose them to it in a safe way so that you can begin this inculcation process, so that you can begin developing virtue in them. If you do not expose them to it while they were young, they will lack the skills needed to properly deliberate about the means to bring about the end. Now, it is only actions that fall here for Aristotle that are choice-worthy or commendable. Okay? It's only actions here that bring glory or bring shame. Okay? No one, in Aristotle's mind, no one should be ashamed about involuntary actions. So when one robs a store under duress, Aristotle does not think that is shameworthy. The reason it's not shameworthy is because this middle step of deliberation was just never there, because the source of the change was external to the subject. But virtue is choice-worthy and virtue is commendable, the same way vice is not choice-worthy and vice is shameful, because it is all subject to deliberation. It is voluntary, and then it is based upon our deliberative capacities. Aristotle does think that as we expose ourselves to the world, we get better at being deliberative. We get better at deliberation. So think, for example, the person who jumps on a diet. They suck at it at first. The people who first want to lose weight and they pick up a diet are really bad at adhering to the diet. But if they are fortunate enough to will themselves through those early phases, and a year, 2 years, 3 years, what have you, passes by, now it becomes really easy to stick to a diet. Okay? You ask someone who is overweight and has never forced themselves to eat healthily, whether or not it's hard to eat the healthy meal, they're going to say, yeah, it's hard, because they have no desire for it. They know the end that they should bring about. They deliberate about the means, but they're really bad about doing it. But if you ask the professional bodybuilder whether or not it is hard to eat the healthy meal, he's going to say no. The reason it's not hard for her to do so is because she has inculcated this habit of temperance. So this is crucial in Aristotle's mind. In order to be virtuous, you must inculcate the habits. Okay? We're going to go ahead and pause there. Like I said, book 4 is mainly fleshing out some examples from courage and temperance. So we'll pause there. We'll continue next week with books 5 and 6.